Hey everyone, welcome back to the Chatverse. I'm Jennifer.
I'm Katie.
And today we're going to be talking about a fun topic where the age that we are in the time period that we were born, we are actually in between two generations.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about how there's a plus side to it, because we got benefits from two different generations.
Yeah.
Like the way how they did things and how they lived before us, that segmented into us, and then what followed. So like with technology and advances and other things. So we're going to talk about that today and talk about the Twitter feed that we found that inspired this. So we're going to go right into it. Today, like we said, we're going to be talking about how the time period that we were born in, we have a really cool thing where we get to benefit from the generation before us and the generation after us with how things were done in school, technology, how the world worked, that kind of stuff. And we got that inspiration from a Twitter feed that Katie's going to go over. And it's really a very cool perspective, I think.
Yeah, it talks about how people born between 1985 and 1995 are the most unique generation of all time.
We're in that part.
Yeah. 93. So then they go and say that they are in between two generations. The one before the internet and technology took over, and the generation after. Then it goes into saying the generation before us was old school and believed in working hard. The generation after us believes in working smart. So that's how the whole thing of that old saying, work smarter, not harder, came about. Then it talks about, we saw it all: radio, TV, Mario,
cassette tapes, CDs. There is so much stuff we're getting into.
Yeah, the old Nokia phones. Like, you could drop that off the heights and that thing would not break. The end of the day, it would still be like just 1% off. It'd be pretty much fully charged. And then we get the benefit of like streaming stuff like Netflix. Then we have all, we know how to use emojis and Snapchat and stuff like that. So, then it says the generation before us can be scammed with simple emails asking for money and offering love. What? Good Lord. Like those Russian brides.
Oh man.
What is that? It's mail order brides. Then it says the generation after us knows it better to have 4 emails, 1 for serious stuff, social media, then financial transactions, and 1 for experiments for things you don't trust. What are you experimenting? I don't know. I only have 1, but okay.
I have several.
I guess I'm old in that. Well, I have my school one from back when I was in college, and then I have my regular one, but I don't have an extra. We are the generation that knows tradition and question it picking from it when what makes sense to hear to us. What? That sentence that makes no sense. So basically, we know tradition, and then we know how to adapt. The generation before us knew no questions. The generation after us knows no tradition. So that's the weird things. Back then, they didn't always ask questions about certain things. They kind of just did things. And now the generation below us doesn't understand traditions. And so it talks about where the gap between the industrial age and the internet age. And we understand both sides from experience. We should be running the world, is what they said. The old guys don't understand what's going on anymore. The new guys don't fully understand where what's going on came from. So we kind of are like that bridge that gaps the two.
And so what really sparked from reading that actually has to deal with experiences, I want to say, that go back to when we were in elementary school. It was a very different time in the early 2000s where things were done differently.
Mm-hmm.
Or it was the fact that you got the combination of how things used to be done and how the things are going on now. A perfect example is very specific. In 3rd grade, I had to do an animal research report. And we had to use the encyclopedia.
Mm-hmm.
You were required as part of your grade to go into the encyclopedia. I think I was on the tiger. So I had to go and do research in the encyclopedia under tiger. So I had to get the T encyclopedia. You had to do research in that. You had to go and find books. So you actually had to get research from books.
Mm-hmm.
You also had to go online, and at that time frame, they were teaching us how to properly do internet searches.
Yeah.
And I don't even use some of that now, and I don't even know if it's a thing where they're like, you typed in a keyword, but then you write plus this, minus. It was this whole weird thing the librarians tried to teach us. So we had to do all of that for the report. They might have even said you might need a magazine or newspaper article.
Yeah.
And that was 3rd graders doing that.
And when you, teachers, when you had to use, like, if you had to do current events and stuff, they made you have to attach the newspaper article or the, like, where you got it from a magazine.
Correct. Yeah, junior year, when we were in high school, we had government for our social studies history part.
Yeah.
And we did current events where you had to go and get newspaper clippings. And it wasn't just getting out a newspaper. You had to write about what was going on.
Yeah. And that's why I think our age group, when we went into college, we knew how to research the old way and research the new way. So then when we had to do research papers, they were well-rounded, all of our sources. It wasn't just somebody going on Wikidocs and going, this is good enough.
Right. And I don't know in school now how much they talk about the different internet sites, but we were always taught when you did research sites, you really need to try to get ones that were .org or .edu.
Yeah.
They were even teaching us, in college, we definitely talked about this when we had to do research papers and whatnot. There was different databases you could go on to get scholar written articles, people's research papers.
Yeah, like you had to go into like the university's like
library
website and you could like go through their cataloged stuff and then get their resources that way, and it would bring them up in like an article form.
Right.
Yeah.
But then we were part of that generation too where we have done so much research in the books, so we would go and do that. When now these kids, if you told them to go in the library and you gave them certain numbers or the Dewey Decimal System to look up, would they be able to find it in the library?
I don't even think they teach the Dewey Decimal System anymore. Do they?
I don't know what they're doing in the elementary, like the library, like when they do specials. I have no clue. I would hope so.
Because we had to, when they would teach us the Dewey Decimal System, they would pull like random books and make us put them away.
Yeah.
There's a cat throwing up.
No.
Behind the chair.
No.
I was like, no. I don't do throw up. Now I gotta clean it up and I hate throw up. My God. Help! I got the other gophers. It's a whole blast. I'm a gag. Oh! Try to get off in the hallway! No! Ew, it's on the rug. My God, it's on the rug.
No. Preston, stop. No.
No. That's disgusting, my guy. Disgusting.
Let me see where you're at.
I'm right here.
Yeah, I get it.
Sup? Cleaning up vomit.
We got the cleanup crew.
Oh, mess on aisle 5. Clean up on aisle 5. Help. It's okay, I got some Microban 24 sanitizer spray. Disgusting.
The color.
I'm surprised I didn't even get it because I don't even throw up.
Don't gag, Jennifer.
What if I just go?
It's the color. It looks like someone went diarrhea.
You look like just that. Oh my god. Oh my god. Something's on my bears. No. Did you see this? Are you helping? I'm surprised I didn't even gag a bit. Yeah, I know. I cleaned up over there, dude.
Okay. Welcome back from our intermission.
Peace out, A-Town.
Okay, so we were talking about stuff in school. The other thing has to deal with how heavily computers are used now with school as a whole compared to when we were in school. The tests when we were in school for the state, so it was, there was called the Proficiency Test, there was all these different stuff for us. It was all in the books.
Yeah.
It was all you get the book that you could only open when they told you go. You had to write in the book. It was
timed.
Yes. Now it's all done on their Chromebooks.
Do you know how much our hands cramped from writing paragraphs?
And that's the other thing. With all this computer stuff, we had to write reports. Yeah, there was the
by
time.
hand.
Yeah, by hand. And sometimes it'd be fully in cursive too.
And it had to be in blue or black ink.
Yeah.
Sometimes you couldn't use a pencil. So if you messed up, you had to write the whole thing over because they didn't want whiteout on it. There were some teachers that would be that extra. So.
And trust us, it wasn't so like medieval as some of the little kids might say now. We did type on the computer. We did a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, we had to learn how to type without looking. Like they would put a folder over our hands so that even if we looked down, we couldn't see our hands typing. You had to know the home row keys and just know how to type from there.
Yeah, there was a program we had. It's called Type to Learn 3, and it was a game. Yet you also had to go through. You also had to go through the different levels for how many words you could type in a minute, your accuracy. There was also something called Study Island when we got into middle school. I don't know if it was in high school.
I don't think so. I think it was a middle school thing.
You had to complete and then get those blue ribbons.
Oh, God.
I wonder how much the mic's picking this up. That's fine. Like, wagging the tail.
Just wagging his tail. Yeah, and it's like if you didn't pass it, you had to redo it multiple times until you got the ribbon.
And then when we were little, there was this whole thing where we were gearing up for the proficiency test. You had to do these like packets. Hello. You had to do these packets.
Finnick is joining the conversation. Or trying to. I don't know.
There was this little envelope that you had to do with your parent, and it was some exercise science question or something. So your parents had to sign off that you completed it. They signed the back of this envelope, you turned it in, and then the teacher would hand it to the next person.
Yeah, it's weird. It was weird.
Yeah.
I mean, and like the whole concept, I think that's why we're better equipped in like knowing how to do research and knowing things of like we're not easily duped because we can look in. Sometimes there's like false stuff online for research because you can go in, especially when people use Wikipedia, you can go in and modify it. So like everything could change, so you can't trust it. So knowing the old way of going into a book and looking it up and going through all of those things and going through like old articles and everything.
Right. And it
gives you more of a solid, like well-rounded.
And this just doesn't have to deal with your school research paper. There are plenty of things that you go through in life that you should do research on or you can do research on. For example, when you go on vacations, you can go and get the different traveler magazines. You can go to the library and go to the travel section and you can get states on the books, or authors will put out travel guides for the states, and you can do some of that stuff. I've done it with Disney before, and you can look the stuff up online, but then it's all right there.
Yeah.
And it can be, some of it can be outdated, so you can find stuff that maybe the new authors might not talk about. There could even be stuff that maybe you might have to go through a medical procedure or anything else in life that you need to find information on. It helped us out because we are well-rounded. We know how to do more than just going on a screen and clicking. Yeah. That's the other point we're trying to make too with this.
You can fact check it, and then you have more resources. And yes, the online has a ton of resources. Yes, that's your hair. But it's always good to know those other skills. And like you were talking about traveling, back when we were younger, like, GPS wasn't really a thing.
That's another good thing.
You had to know how to read a map, and like you had to know like north, east, west, and south. Like you had to know. Like we were taught that in school, like how.
Yeah, I don't.
And to read old-fashioned clocks and stuff. Kids these days.
That's another thing. I have been in rooms with kids before, and they don't know how to read the clock on the walls.
Yeah, the clocks with the hands, like they don't know how to read them. They know digital clocks, and it's
I want to say it was even when I worked at a summer camp years ago. The kids could not read the clock. And like, well, what time's lunch? Well, look at the clock.
Yeah. And they don't know, like, what a quarter till is and stuff like that.
Yeah. They don't understand some of the stuff because they want to see the digital on their Apple Watches, on their phones. Yeah. That type of a stuff. So, yeah, that's a whole other thing.
And then there's the whole...
counting money.
Yeah, they taught us in school. We had fake money, and they would teach us how to count change. They don't teach that anymore.
Because they all just want to do credit cards or tap and pay with their phones if they put it on their credit card.
So it's like, when I worked in retail and everything and having to deal with money, like, if the register wasn't working right or if somebody gave me extra afterwards, I had to know how, like, since learning that, I knew how to know how much change to give them then. And if I had to pull out a calculator, fine. That's the other thing. They don't know how to use, like, old-fashioned calculators. They just know
I actually thought about that today. I happened to look at the time today when it was 11:34. And when I was looking at the clock, it reminded me of the calculator jokes kids would play years ago, where there was certain numbers that you typed in on your calculator if you turned upside down and spelled a word. Yeah. And so 11:34 upside down backwards, it says hell.
Yeah. So people would type boobs on there.
Yeah, and so stuff like that I don't know if these younger kids, like, it would be us and the people older
that would know.
That's because
we had to get specific calculators.
I want to say if the kids are doing calculus and stuff, they should be. Yeah. Because there's a lot of stuff that you still need a calculator for that, I know they're going to say, well, on your phone, I believe on the phone you can turn it to scientific calculator mode.
Yeah, if you turn it sideways. But yeah, that's the thing, like, with talking about the change, like, even when I would be doing it and I'd tell somebody, like, they're behind the register and I'm like, all you owe me is, like, $5. And they're like, they're still trying to figure it out and they're freaking out. And I'm like, just give me $5 back. That's the change. I'm like, right. It's not that big of a deal. Like, your drawer won't be off. All you do is give me $5. Your drawer's right. My change is right. That's it. Like, they can't even do that. They're like, oh, let me X out the whole entire transaction and do it over. It's like, no, you don't have to do that. Right. Like, if you feel the need, pull out a calculator or pull out your phone, calculate it on there, and then you'll just know, okay, I just do this. But they don't know how to, like, subtract the tax and all of that kind of stuff. Right.
Speaking of phone, we were part of the generation where we had landlines. We still have a landline, but it wasn't just a landline, it was a corded phone.
Oh, yeah. Your main house phone was on the cord. And so, like, if you were talking to somebody, you could only walk so far. Yeah. And, like, ours was in our kitchen. So, like, I would remember my mom would be on the phone and she'd like be walking across, she'd be cooking
You
dinner
know,
at the
by
same
long
time
cord.
and have the long cord. She'd be going to the refrigerator and like anytime she was on the phone, if like we had to get around, we either had to like lift it up and go under or you stepped over it. It was one of those things.
It wasn't just that. People would actually talk on the phone. You can have long conversations. I miss that.
Nobody
so
wants to talk
much.
anymore. They just like texting. Like
There's people that if you try calling them, they won't answer. And they'll text you, what do you want?
And we, like, back then, like, with having conversations on the phone and stuff, when we would call each other's houses, like, as little kids and stuff, your parent would always answer the phone.
Yeah.
And you would have to say, hey, Mrs. So-and-so, is Katie home or whatever?
Yeah.
And so, like, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'd be like, yeah, how are you doing? And they'll be, let me go get her. And that's how it always be. Like, my mom would scream to me, like, hey, so-and-so's on the phone. Mm-hmm. And then it would be like, don't be on the phone too long because I need it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because then the other thing, too, is that years ago we had dial-up internet.
Yeah.
And that you used your home phone line, it would tap in. So that whenever they joke around about that sound that a generation knows, we know it.
Yeah.
And if you would lift, you would not only hear it when it was dialing, so they're calling the number to get you connected, but if someone else in your house picked up another landline phone, you would hear that. Mm-hmm. And there's a chance if you picked it up, you could hang up the people on the internet and you would get disconnected.
Yeah.
Even if someone kept calling your house phone too many times. My sister had friends that would call our house too many times, they would hang us up on the internet.
Yeah. And there was the thing of, like, on, like, landlines, if somebody picked up the other landline and they didn't know you were on the phone and they started dialing, you would hear them, like, dialing.
Yes. See, we still have our home phone, and
So do we.
glad about that because cell phone service sometimes is not reliable, or you might live in city areas that it might not be as great. We happen to live in a part of our city that it's crappy cell phone service. Mm-hmm. So that's why we're glad we have the home phone. And I'll be on the phone with the store or someone that I don't have a great connection. And then you'll have my dad picking up, starting to dial all the way in the basement. And you're like, yo, hang up.
I'm on the phone.
The other thing was with the home phone, you had the answering machine that you recorded the message. And wasn't, you listened to it on the phone. You press play, and if that volume was up, the whole house would hear what that message was about.
Yeah, you still hear it, yeah.
Or it would be like, if you can hear me, pick up the phone, like my grandparents would say,
and, like,
pick up.
Too, like, when landlines first were around, like, there wasn't caller ID. So you would just have to answer the phone, and you never knew who was going to be on the phone. So if it was somebody you didn't want to talk to, or if it was, like, a telemarketer, it didn't tell you, like, spam call. It wouldn't tell you anything.
Oh, my God.
So you just had to answer the phone and, like, be like, hello?
It was horrible. We did not get caller ID until I was in college. So I was like in my early 20s when I finally got it. Well, you would deal with it with your cell phone, of course. Yeah. But you're like, this is the best thing ever. If so-and-so's calling, we don't have to pick up for them.
And you couldn't block calls. Now you can block calls on home phones and stuff. Like, you could never do it back then. Like, you just had to, you would just get people calling you. But
then, of course, you'd always have those friends or family members that would call around the same time every day. Or if you were eating dinner, like, my sister would have these friends who would call right when we were eating dinner, like, at 6 o'clock all the time. We were like, we're eating dinner. And they would just, we didn't have caller ID, but we knew who it was. And sure enough, it was them.
Yeah, we would always, like, have the rule of, like, don't answer the phone at dinner. Mm-hmm. Like, where I sit at the dinner table, the phone would be, like, right behind me. Now, the kitchen's designed differently, but it was, like, on the wall behind me. So, I would, being the closest one, if my mom said to answer the phone, if it kept ringing and ringing, like, they called back, I would have to be the one to answer it. And then I'd be like, yeah, she's right here. And I'd have to give it to my mom. Because I was the one right there. Mm-hmm. So, it's like, yeah, you didn't have... It was, like, those old phones that you just put on the thing... Didn't have, like, the caller ID. Then you got it afterwards. When texting just first was coming out, we had flip phones. We had to push the same button multiple times to get a letter. So you had to,
And it wasn't the keyboard. The keyboard came out when we were in high school.
Yeah.
So it was just the click 3 times to get this letter, that, and you'd just be like, click, 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 click. It would take ever
to type a word.
Then we got the slide-out keyboard, which was amazing.
Yeah, they had, like, the sidekicks and then the Blackberries and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It was a Blackberry sidekick, wasn't it? It was called.
I don't remember. But yeah, the Blackberries had those, and...
Yeah, they had it either you would slide up and have the little keyboard this way, or you would have the ones that were the side.
So, in a way, the evolution of us having that full keyboard on our smartphones is from us in high school having the slider phones where you have the whole keyboard of the little buttons where you go click, 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 click.
Yeah, it wasn't until, I think... my senior year? No, I think I still had...
Smartphones they started to come into play towards the end of high school.
Yeah, it was after high school that I want to say... Well, no. It was, like, towards the end of my senior year that... Like, our senior year.
Yeah.
That I had a smartphone, but it was an Android. Because I had one of the slide-up ones that had the keyboard. For a long time. After having the... Yeah, but I remember the first time, like... we got, like, texting and stuff. We were like, oh, yeah, cool. But then you're just, like, hitting, like, a million buttons to try to try to text somebody. And you didn't have emojis. It was, you had to use, like, the semicolon and the, like, parenthesis and, like, all of that stuff. Yeah.
So the other funny thing that, like, we talk about the evolution of stuff with the generations is it has to deal with how music was distributed. So, like, back in the... I know, like, the 60s and 70s and stuff, they had the records, and there was the 45s and all that. Then it went into the cassette tapes. We were part of that...
There was 8 tracks before, too.
Oh, yeah. There was the 8 tracks before that. I was like, yeah, there was these other bulky things. Then you had the cassette tapes. When we were little, when we would get the sing-along tapes, or movie soundtracks, or...
It was on a cassette.
Stuff, it was on cassette tape. And cassette tapes... You
had to rewind it.
Rewind them. It was that film inside.
It was like a mini VHS.
Yeah, which that's a whole other thing we can talk about.
Yeah, because people are going to be like, what's a VHS?
We'll get to it in a moment. But yeah, you could snag it in this you could snag it in your cassette player, and it was, you pressed a button, it popped out, and you had to slide it in, you pushed it in, and you pressed play, and wherever you left it off the last time, that's where it was going to be.
It was going to play.
It's not going to be digital where you could start up where you want to. It was just there. Yeah. And you could not know where it was, so there was no indicator to be like, stop at this moment, this is where this song is going to be. Yeah. And cassette tapes were in cars. You could have the little Walkmans, so you could walk around with the headsets with them. Yeah. And that was around for a while. And at the same time, it was CDs. Yeah. I am still a huge fan of CDs. I will purchase CDs even though they're not really coming out as often anymore because we're digital streaming. But CDs was huge because a CD, you no longer had something that was so fragile you could snag it. And you could press play and go click to which track you want to be on.
Yeah, and you knew exactly, like, okay, this is going to be here, this is going to be that. And then, like, it wasn't like iPods and stuff. And, like, when iPods came out, it was the shuffle. And, like, you couldn't see a screen or anything. It was like, it looked like a stick. Yeah. And it looked like a USB stick. Basically, with, like, a play button and stuff. But with the CDs before that came out, you had a portable CD player. And you had the old, like, headphones with the, like, foam things on it. We looked like total dweebs when we were younger. But it was the cool thing. You didn't look like a dweeb because it was, like, that was the thing.
Yeah, then. I would bring my portable CD player on the bus. Yeah. And I would bring, like, a Shania Twain CD, a Britney Spears CD, or... I want to say at one, Rascal Flatts has been around long enough that I would have been bringing that on the bus. So it was like stuff like that, or like movie soundtracks like Grease. Yeah. And CDs, people had a ton of CDs.
I still have a lot of CDs there and there.
Oh, I kept all my CDs too because I like the fact that it's a hard copy. Yeah. And it's not something like
I'll still buy like somebody's like a favorite artist of mine. Like I'll still buy their new CDs. So
it's really sad when you go into Best Buy and Target now. There's no music section. It's just the section where it's new releases, and then they'll have a tiny section of like greatest hits or stuff that came out recently, and then they're bringing the vinyls back. So they'll have like a whole section at Target for that and at Best Buy. But it's so sad because you used to be able to go in there. Barnes & Noble, I haven't been up there in a while to see what they have, but they had a huge section. You can just peel through the stuff.
They still have some stuff in Barnes & Noble. I went last year. It's not as, like, densely packed as it was. It's kind of, like, it's still, like, spread out through the room, but it's, like, movies mixed in, too. Mm-hmm. So there's not, like, CDs is kind of, like, weaned out. It's not too much.
Yeah, so we went through all that stuff before the digital age even came here. So that's the same thing, the evolution of not knowing what track's going to play next to knowing to it being digital where you can pick and choose a plate. Like, you can, of course, you make your mixtapes, your mix CDs, where you can put what you want on a CD and burn it on your computer.
Yeah.
But with the digital age, it's gotten a whole new platform.
Especially with apps like Pandora, Apple Music, Spotify, all of those things where you can just search up your favorite artist, or like you can make your own playlist, kind of like how we would make our mixed CDs and stuff. But you can do that, and it's all right there, and then you can just hit the song you want. Like, you don't, you can play it on shuffle play if you want to, and it's all right there, where you don't have to go through and be like, this is the CD I need to put on this CD, and you like you're grabbing all these CDs to make that mixtape. You don't have to do that anymore.
Right. There is this stuff with the VHS. It's super similar to where when you put the VHS in, VHS was like a cassette tape. Your movie was on film. You put in the VCR and you played your VHS tape.
That loud noise would come on.
Yeah. And you had to rewind to the beginning, like from Dawson's Creek. Dawson and Pacey worked at the movie store, and the rental store. And Pacey, one of my favorite lines, he says in it is, "Be kind, rewind."
Yeah.
Hey, be kind, rewind.
Your tapes back in. But it went from the VHS to DVD.
And that was the thing where, like, we had to go to a physical, like, movie rental store, like Blockbuster and stuff. You had to go there. And that was the biggest thing. You would go on a Friday night, you would go pick out your movies, video game, whatever, and then you would order pizza and you would watch a movie. So, like, you had to physically go and pick it out and rent it, and you would have it for, like, X amount of time that they would, like, rent it out to you. And then you would go and return them and then get new, like, stuff. It wasn't where you could just be on Disney Plus or, like, all of these other streamings.
Well, the same thing you could still go to your library now and get out DVDs and music.
Yeah.
And it's always a thing even with the libraries. Well, are you going to have to get put on a waiting list?
Yeah.
Is your title movie that you want to get out, is it there?
Yeah.
And then it's the fact of when you get your copy, how great of a copy is it?
Right.
How scratched up is the DVD that's going to skip the whole time, or how good is this VHS going to play? That was the game itself when you would get those. Like, you might have had some family that just trashed the thing. Or, like, the covers would be just so gross when you would get them. Like, where was this?
Yeah, you're just like, it's not even recognizable.
Yeah.
There's just... And then there's the whole aspect of manners. Like... There's a lot of things that we learned from the generation before us. Like you said, please and thank you. You did all of these things. We would write thank you notes. And there was a timely fashion to do it. Now people, they don't, if they even write a thank you note, they'll send it out like months later. And it's like, we had to
Or
send
they
it.
don't.
Right, they don't even do it anymore.
Yeah.
Like, it would be all that kind of stuff. We would send handwritten letters to people in the mail.
Yeah, the whole art of letter writing has gone down the tubes.
Yeah.
Even Christmas cards now. Oh, I know you guys do this. Not dissing you guys, but people, instead of handwriting out regular cards, they'll just order off a Shutterfly where it's a message that everyone gets and a picture. So even like the evolution of that has changed.
Yeah.
When before people were writing hand personal letters to each person, they were sending Christmas cards out to, birthday cards in the mail. The other thing too is even talking to people politely or professionally.
Holding the door for people, like all of that kind of stuff.
Would you say, like, for example, when there's family events, how there's some generations now below us that they're not even showing up to family events anymore?
Yeah, and then there's, like, when we were younger, like, tradition was, like, a big thing with, like, holidays or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, over time you saw it, like, dwindle.
It's really, really sad.
And that's, like, the thing, like, it would, like, be, you would do this, like, almost every year. You would go, like, here for one of the holidays, here for this, and, like, all that kind of stuff. You would have your, like, traditional dinners for, like, your ethnicity or whatever, like, your ancestry, and all that kind of stuff. And there's, like, a lot of people that don't do that. There's people that don't even sit down as a family and eat dinner anymore.
Yes, and this is the other thing. With tradition, see, I don't know what you guys do, but for us, for birthdays, it is, like, mandatory that you have a cake, you sing happy birthday, blow out the candles, you do presents. Mm-hmm. I know so many people that they think that is weird and ridiculous to do.
Yeah.
Which I don't know what you guys do. So I don't mean to call you. No, I don't know what you guys do. So you're like, we don't do that.
If we don't get a cake, we'll get like cupcakes or something.
Okay. Do you guys do candles or sing or?
Yeah, we'll do candles and stuff, and yeah, like we'll sing occasionally. It just depends.
I know people that they think that's bizarre, or they don't do it, or it's a fact of that. Some people maybe did it years ago and stopped. I don't even know if some people even did it years ago. Like, it's like we said, it's the traditions of, we grew up with family or our age that stuff took place during a time period and we brought it in. But then if, for example, if you have generations now that are from 95 or below, that they're old enough, they're having kids or having kids younger now, they might not have had traditions or stopped doing things or don't have manners or whatnot. Now they're raising kids. So then you have a whole new generation growing up that, like we said, we're stuck in this generation where we got the best of both worlds. Yeah. Now you've got the generations now that are the generation below us, and like that one post said, not knowing what came before them or understanding. So that could be like historical events, things talked about in school, or and they family just, talking about stuff.
Yeah, and they just are so easy to, like, oh, well, somebody said this on the internet, it must be true. Like, they don't do that well-rounded research for themselves, like we were talking about earlier. But what I've seen that, like, I think is sad for, like, younger kids and stuff, like, families don't sit down and have dinners. They don't, like, we would have game nights on, like, Friday nights or Saturdays or whatever, and you would have, like, you could have your friends over, and it would be, like, your family friends, so it would be their whole family, your family, and you would have, like, dinner and then a game night, and then it's just the whole simple act of you would sit down to dinner as a family.
Now people are eating dinner separately in their rooms.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, not to call anybody out, but I think that's gross to go in your room to eat, like, a steak dinner, or on your bed sitting and eating, or going in, you know, having your, like, chicken and potatoes or ketchup. Like, why do you want... First, it's the smell coming in your room. Then you can get bugs and stuff in your room. Like, to me, like, that's a whole other thing. Yeah. But it's like, you have a kitchen table. There's people who have kitchen tables, they don't use it. It's their junk table.
I know, it's weird. But, yeah, I, like, they don't... Because when we were younger, this was dinner time. If you were out playing and stuff, we had we called it a cowbell, but it was, like, kind of an old ship bell. So, like, my mom would ring it. If we heard it, we would come running. You came home. My dad would whistle if he was the one calling us. And you knew that was time your friends had to go home. It was dinner time, the X, Y, Z, and we would have to sit down. You would wash up before dinner, like, wash your hands and everything. And then you would sit at dinner. There was no phones, no, like, Game Boys, nothing else.
Not TV being on at the same time watching.
You were sat at your dinner table, you were talking to your family, you were having that quality time with your family. Now that's not a thing.
And that's why a lot of families don't know what the hell's going on with anyone in the house. No. They don't. No one knows what's going on. Communication has gone down the drain so much. So, yeah, that's what you would say, like, the evolution of things. You know?
Yeah, and it's still, like, that's how, like, when I'm hanging out with friends or something, I don't really pay attention to my phone as much. I have an Apple
hate
Watch.
That when people,
So I have an Apple Watch, so like if I see a text message come across, if it's important, I will answer it. If it's not, I'll answer it later. I'm not going to be on my phone. If there's like a lull, somebody goes to the bathroom or something and you're checking your phone, like whatever. But if somebody's having a conversation with you and you're sat there like not really paying attention and scrolling through your phone, it's rude. And I can't stand it. And that's like when you go out to dinner with people, put your phone away. Don't sit at the dinner table like scrolling through.
Or when you're having movie nights and you show up and then everyone's on their phones.
Yeah, or you have parties and stuff and you're trying to have a conversation. I remember at your graduation, because I didn't know too many people at your college graduation, except for like maybe a couple.
Yeah.
And those people were talking to me and then they left early because they had to go do something. And then everybody else was on their phones. So I was just like, this is weird. Like,
yeah.
I'm like, is this how parties are? Like, people are just on their phone.
Or we've gotten into the part now is, if I don't know you, then I'm not going to talk to you.
Right.
Like, at events. Years ago, you would talk to, like, a bunch of people. Now you get into these habits where if you go over someone's house and there's people you don't know, sometimes, like, they don't talk to you, and it's this awkwardness.
It's weird.
Yeah.
That's the thing. And you, like, being who you are, you try to talk to them, and they just kind of
like... you could tell they're not having it at all.
No,
they just want to go on their phone, curl up in the corner.
They kind of just shun you and, like, ignore you, and you're just like,
okay. Then they make you seem like you're, like...
the weirdo. Well, okay, then.
Well, I think we're going to wrap it up for this video, because I feel like we could do a lot more talking about this.
Yeah.
But I feel like we talked about a good chunk that it's probably just time to end it before it'll be even longer.
Because it'll just be a ramble.
Yes. So, thank you everyone for joining us. How about in the comments below, if you are part of that generation, what is something that you've been exposed to or something that you grew up with that is part of the generation before and after that you grew up with? Or if there's something in the generation that you are in now, what is something that you know that would go on before with pop culture or what we would talk about with life stuff that you don't do now, but you know it existed? I'm kind of curious about that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And thank you for joining us in the Chatverse.